Good morning. Today we are going to be dividing fractions. One of my favorite things to do, actually, because it makes me think of Kit Kats and how you can split up a Kit Kat to share with your friends. That is what dividing fractions is all about. Today our topic is dividing fractions. It goes on to page 34 of your interactive notebook. The tape is not making that very noticeable. Page 34. And it's the essential question for this topic is, what are the essential steps in dividing fractions? Today, after our lesson, you should be able to compute quotients of fractions. Now, for this, you are going to need a Post-it note . You are going to need a Post-it note to use for these notes. Just one, and what I like to do when I'm doing this is I measure it out. I put my Post-it note where I'm going to want it to be and just kind of create little lines to show that I don't want to write beyond those spots. Now, when we divide fractions using the standard algorithm, not a model or any other particular system, we're just using the standard algorithm, I like to use the acronym KCF. KCF, not KFC. KCF. And I use that to remember that when I'm doing fractions, I'm going to keep the first fraction, I'm going to change the operation, and I'm going to flip to the reciprocal. Flip-flop the fraction at the end. KCF. Now that I've made my KCF Post-it note that's going to hide my rules, I'm going to now move that out of the way, and I'm going to start putting down my actual rules so that I know what they are. So when dividing fractions, the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to keep the first fraction the same. And I'm going to box my K so I remember that that's to keep. So if I were to have the fraction 1/2 divided by 3/4, I would keep this first fraction the same. So it would stay 1/2 divided by 3/4. Now my next step is I'm going to change the operation to multiplication. So we're going to change it from division to multiplication. And I'm going to box my C. So meaning if I had 1/2, instead of divided by 3/4, I would have multiplied by 3/4. And then I'm going to flip it. Flip the final fraction to its reciprocal. Now, a reciprocal is just a very mathy term for, we're going to flip-flop the fraction, and we're going to put the denominator as the numerator and the numerator as the denominator. I call it the flipper-flopper. I don't know why, but I like to, and that's what we're going to call it. So we flip the reciprocal. When you've done all those things, all that's left to do is to solve and simplify. So, I forgot to give my example. So if I had 1/2 times, I had 3/4, I'm now going to flip that to 4/3. And that is the keep, change, flip process. Now, if you need to pause the video, you can pause the video and you can go back and fill in any blanks that you might have had, but we're going to keep going on. And we're going to go to our first practice problem. Our first practice problem that we have is 3/4 divided by 1/3. All right. Remember the keep, change, flip process. Start. right, so hopefully you've written it down. I'm changing this fraction around. So we have 3/4 times, so we kept the first fraction. We multiplied instead of divided, which is to change the operation. And we're going to flip this 1/3, the second fraction, to the reciprocal, which would be 3/1. Now that we've set up our fraction, now we're going to solve. What is 3 times 3, class?
9.
Good. 4 times 1?
1.
Can anybody tell me what is that fraction called that we got there? Peyton. It's an improper fraction. It's where the top is too heavy, right? The top or the numerator is bigger than the denominator. So we have to make that not top heavy. We've got to simplify it out. And we do that by figuring out how many whole numbers we can pull out of the numerator. How many times can the denominator go out of the numerator? What do you think, class? 2. So we would have 2. Now if we take 2 times 4, that's 8. And we subtract that from our numerator, 9 minus 8 is what? 1. So we're left with 1/4. That's your answer. 2 and 1/4. All right, let's do another practice problem. This one is 2/6 divided by 4/7. Try setting that up. Remember KCF. Alright, so I'm going to set up mine. I've got 2/6, I keep the same because it's the first fraction, we keep it the same. Then I'm going to change my operation from division to multiplication. And then I'm going to flip to the reciprocal, so I have 4/7, it's going to become 7/4. Now, at this point, I could multiply straight across like I did in the previous problem, but I'm going to choose to pull some products out of the problem and simplify prior to actually doing my problem. So I'm going to look at these cross numbers, and I'm going to see, is there any factor that these two share? Well, there's not on that one. But what about in these two? Is there a factor that 2 and 4 share, a number that goes into 2 evenly and 4 evenly? Alyssa? 2, right? Good. So 2 divided by 2 is what, class? 1. 4 divided by 2 is what? 2. So I just crossed them out and put the number that when I remove the factor I'm left with. So now I'm going to multiply straight across. What is 1 times 7?
7.
6 times 2?
12.
So I end up with 7/12. 7 is a prime number and it cannot go into 12. So I'm now left with, that's the fraction. I can't simplify it anymore. So I write my answer, and now I move on to the next one. And our final example that we're going to do together is going to be a mixed number, 1 and 1/4 divided by 2/8. Now, when we have a mixed number in our problem, just like when we did multiplication, how we have to make that into an improper fraction so that we can use it, we have to do the same thing with division. So we're going to make this first mixed number, 1 and 1/4, into a improper fraction, a top-heavy fraction. We do that by taking the whole number, multiplying it by the 4, the denominator. So 1 times 4 is 4. And then we add the numerator. Well, 4 plus 1 is 5. So I'm going to get 5/4 instead of 1 and 1/4. So now I'm going to try to write my problem using that information. So I'm going to take 5/4 as my first fraction, keep it the same, change my operation from division to multiplication, and flipper-flopper, flip to the reciprocal, and I'm going to take my 2/8 and I'm going to make it 8/2. Now, is there a product we can pull, or a factor we can pull out to simplify in our problem, Ray?
4.
4. On which one? This one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. 4 divided by 4 is what?
1.
8 divided by 4? 2. Good. And now we multiply straight across, right? 5 times 2 is what? 10 over 1 times 2 is 2. Can I simplify that?
Yeah.
Who can tell me what the simplified answer would be? Haley.
5.
5. Because 2 goes into 10 5 times. All right, guys, so now that we've done these 3 practice problems, I think you're prepared to practice this on your own. I'm going to put my Post-it note there so I can hide my rules, so I can use that as a study tool later on. And I'm going to use that information to go over to page 33 and solve these 3 practice problems. Don't forget that you're going to keep the first fraction, change the operation from division to multiplication, and flip to the reciprocal. And if you have a mixed number, you got to make it improper. And always solve and simplify. Thank you so much.